will be introducing our next speaker, Mark Verheul, who's my friend. So we really appreciate that he's here today. Mark is a partner at Protocol International, The Hague, a co-author of an expert's guide to international protocol best practice in diplomatic and corporate relations. I will advise that we get that guide. I have read it and I want to recommend it on the spot. Yes. I'm former project coordinator, Office of the Chief of Royal Protocol. I will present to you Mark Verheul. Mark, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Patricia, for this wonderful introduction. And I'm very glad to be here today. When I'm going to share my screen, you will all see what I'm going to present about today. One second. Because apparently I can't. Yeah. Great. I'm going to talk about a very inspiring sports event that took place actually a couple of weeks ago in my hometown in The Hague in the Netherlands. And it's going to be about the Invictus Games. And I had the honor and real privilege to be leading the protocol team as an interim assignment from indeed my own company, Protocol International, based in The Hague. And I was doing that with two of my business partners, Zilla Luft and Maurice Larcher-Mel. And I was supported by two protocol officers, like two fresh recent graduates from the Leiden University in The Hague, Dylan Clemencia and Sami Jaber. And together we have been working on this very inspiring event. But a short introduction, I guess, first about how it all began. What are the Invictus Games? It's actually an initiative by the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry. He served in the army, in the British Army, for a couple of years and went on 2 missions to Afghanistan. And during those missions, he experienced the enormous impact on what it means for wounded and sick and injured servicemen and women, how to recover from everything they experienced, and not only for themselves as servicemen and women, but also the impact those circumstances had on their friends and family. So when he visited the United States in 2013, he attended the Warrior Games, which is an American sports event for indeed wounded and injured military servicemen and women to encourage recovery through the power of sports. And actually, he wanted to do something similar in an international component. So not just for American warriors, but actually from all kinds of nations that participated in the peacekeeping operation in Afghanistan. So in London, he organized the first Invictus Games in 2014. And actually, it took place a couple of times afterwards as well, in Orlando in 2016, then moved to Canada, to Toronto, Sydney in 2018, and then it was supposed to take place in The Hague in 2020, in May, so 2 years ago. But obviously, the entire lockdown around the world due to the COVID-19 pandemic, they had to postpone it twice. So that's why it took place like the edition of 2020, actually a few weeks ago. And then next year in September, Düsseldorf in Germany will be the host city of the 2023 edition. And like, I love this quote of the Duke of Sussex to really get into what is it all about. He talks about them, the competitors, they are ordinary people doing extraordinary things. that is something we can all aspire to. You do not have to be a veteran who has fought back from injury to be inspired by the Invictus spirit. Well, to have a look at that Invictus spirit, I would like to show the short after movie we made about the Invictus Games of last month.
After 2 years, we are finally here. The Invictus Games, The Hague 2020. This is what we've all been waiting for. 20 nations, 500 athletes. And just look at the support all around the stadium.
Ashes flying in the air.
Invictus, are you ready? We see you.
We're saving what we can.
You have the heart of Invictus.
For reasons you don't understand.
You can feel that anticipation all around. Just look at the focus. And they're off.
We're born again.
My kids were in the crowd and they saw their mum run. They've not seen me run, and that's why I'm here.
What a race! And that is the Invictus spirit.
We're so appreciative of these guys coming out here helping me out. That's what these games are all about.
Incredible. These are moments that are going to resonate right around the world.
The obstacles that people have overcome to get to Invictus, and then if they win a medal, I'm going to be more happy about that than if I win. So.
Keep believing, we can do this.
And my word, what it means to the Ukrainian team.
Did you feel like you're born again?
No matter what life throws at you, you just pick yourself up and just go for it.
The Games is really about just learning what you can do, not what you can't. Being the best version that you can be.
Jump in the water.
Oh, he's taken him out! This must hurt.
Never give up.
This gentleman is absolutely extraordinary.
That's an order.
Great, has he done it? He has! He's done it by 2 meters!
I want to show to the warriors that we can continue to live.
Wedding proposal. Isn't that brilliant?
Running out, it is now or never. The medal is the prize. But this is about so much more than that.
To all of you here tonight, I am honoured to have served alongside you. Thank you for your service, and we'll see you in Dusseldorf.
What a week, and what an honour it's been to share their stories. Good night.
Yes, and indeed, what an honor it has been to also be part of the local organizing committee to organize this very inspiring event. Indeed, 20 different countries, but of course, with the geopolitical situation at the moment, and we've been referring to it already in previous sessions, the war in Ukraine also being part of the 20 participating nations, and they were able to make it this time with competitors and friends and family, and also their Deputy Minister for Veteran Affairs. But of course, you can imagine that from all these countries, it is a perfect opportunity to pay respect for the wounded servicemen and women. So we had a wide range of officials and delegations coming over throughout the week, from ministerial delegations, of course, a lot of chiefs of defense, a NATO delegation, we had royalty, of course, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex were there. So everything had to be managed and balanced in a way that the main focus would be on the competitors. The mantra is really competitors first, and balanced it that it didn't become too political, with especially like the entire geopolitical situation that is going on in the world right now. And then on top of that, like it all took place in a big park in The Hague. So different sports venues scattered all around the park, different entrances, VIP lounges. whatsoever. So you can imagine that the logistics for all the delegations, if they would spend 1 or more days at the Invictus Games, we really needed to have a big group of protocol liaison officers to support us in welcoming, escorting the delegations, making sure that the right introductions would be made, that the seating arrangements would be in order. So I have been supported by a very good team. Not all of them are on this group picture because they were also working at the same time. But we had 40 volunteers from all around the world joining us, actually from all walks of life. So very experienced protocol professionals already, but also a lot of young volunteers who studied in The Hague or in its surroundings, and really wanted to participate and well, contribute to this major sports event. But to keep or to bring everyone up to a certain standard, of course, we needed to provide a training program for them. So that's what I did together with my partners, to at least make sure that all the volunteers would be knowing what was expected from them. And Patricia indicated the book already that I co-authored. Of course, that was one of the basic elements of the training program. And what we really wanted to indicate was that due to the fact that we had delegations of so many different levels and also levels of formality, we really needed to show the balance between formality and protocol and informality, because the informality was actually key during the Invictus Games. If, for example, we see the first arrival of the Duke and the Duchess of Sussex, which was actually their first public appearance outside the United States of America after they stepped down as senior royals at Kensington Palace. So you can imagine that, like, the media was very much interested in this walk, in this arrival. And it was decided that indeed competitors first, that was the mantra. So, like, they are guided actually by two Dutch athletes, two Dutch competitors, rather than with the Prime Minister or the Minister of Defense or the Mayor of the City of The Hague. They wanted to have it as an informal look and feel. Obviously, upon arrival in front of the area where the welcoming reception took place, there was the welcoming of the Dutch dignitaries, the hosts of the event, the Mayor of the City of The Hague, the Dutch Chief of Defense, and the Deputy Minister of Defense. And of course, walking inside the nation's home, with a guard of honor in front of it, the mayor as main host of the welcoming reception, having their guests of honor to his right-hand side to follow the rules of protocol, and then actually going into the reception room. You've seen the stadium where the opening and the closing ceremonies took place. And again, competitors first. That was the mantra. So, like, the first rows, you see the entire stadium full of the different teams of the countries. You don't really see dignitaries. You don't see the King of the Netherlands. You don't see all those ministers and chiefs of defense. They are actually behind the competitors in the stadium itself. So we really wanted to make a distinction, like we would like to honor the competitors, so they sit in the front. Except for the very first row, where we had the speakers who also participated in the opening ceremony. So the ones who had played a role were actually seated on the first row, surrounded by all the competitors. And then in the grandstand, so behind the competitors, you had indeed the official rows with, for example, here, His Majesty the King, with all the military officials behind him. So it's not necessarily so that the king always has to sit on the first row. It depends on what you would like to achieve with the event. So here, competitors first, then the officials. But of course, when they arrive, you have to make sure that the protocol rules and guidelines are indeed adopted, even though it is an informal sports event. So, for example, this was the arrival of His Majesty the King of the Netherlands at the wheelchair basketball finals. So that was in the afternoon. So, of course, like in the evening with the closing ceremony, he was wearing a suit. Here, the dress code was smart casual. And he is actually welcomed by the chairman of the local organizing committee, our former chief of the armed forces. Then the patron of the Invictus Games Foundation, the Duke of Sussex, was the second person who was welcoming His Majesty the King. And then with the group picture with the three of them together, the host in the center, to his right, the guest of honor, the King of the Netherlands, and then the Duke of Sussex. But of course, like inside the stadium, we wanted to arrange it that the Duke and the King would sit next to each other, also for the picture. So indeed, there, and again, very informal, like it was a great atmosphere. Here, the King and the Duke and the chairman are actually waving and singing and cheering for the Dutch and American team who are actually in the finals. And not only in this very informal setting, but also, for example, here, the chargé d'affaires, the ambassador of the United States of America cheering for her team in a very informal manner. But obviously, of course, throughout the games week, we also had to deal with the correct forms of dress and styles and flags. Of course, she is holding the American flag here, but also with the flag protocol arrangement in front of the stadium. We just heard from the presentation of Ms. Philippa Lawrence that it can either be with seating arrangements or other arrangements in either the English or the French alphabet. Actually, the Invictus Games Foundation decided to use the French alphabetical order of positioning the flags in front of the stadium. So even though it's an English-based organization, they still decide to go for the, well, more traditional diplomatic language of French in their flag protocol arrangements. And then, of course, going Dutch, you're in the Netherlands, we all use our bicycles, so also the Duke of Sussex. So no formal motorcades in that respect, but we really wanted to keep it low profile and informal. But obviously, if, for example, a huge NATO delegation came over from Brussels with all the kind of the military representatives of the participating nations and the senior leadership of the NATO military committee, of course, we had to arrange for these kind of handshakes, even though, for example, them were all in their uniforms. You see that the Duke of Sussex is very informally dressed, but that didn't really matter. That was not the nature of the event. So everything was kind of possible. And then, of course, like with a formal group picture in front of the stadium with all those high-level military officials, like in between all kind of families who were there with their children having fun, sitting outside in the public area to enjoy a lunch or whatsoever. So the look and feel was really like, okay, it is informal, it's a sports event, but then also, of course, dealing with these high-level delegations. Like, for example, here, Pete Buttigieg, the United States Secretary of Transportation and former presidential candidates, coming over from Washington, D.C., with, of course, a big delegation. And here it's only a small part that you actually see. And next to a lot of bilateral talks that were planned on the premises, in the margins of the event, and their main reason to be there was indeed cheering for their athletes, for their competitors in an, again, informal setting. So for example, here on the left, you see the Secretary of Transportation indeed with some competitors of the United States. Or on the right-hand side, the Dutch Prime Minister actually behind the scenes cheering for the Dutch team. And we could arrange for these kind of meetings in all kind of different settings. Also here with Princess Margriet, the aunt of our king, like on a sunny afternoon, like really kind of cheering with the Dutch team and the competitors outside. Just to make sure that they were all enthusiastic and feeling supported. But in a more official setting, that His Majesty the King was actually going and meet all the competitors, like in some conversation rounds. So we made tables of 4 or 5 competitors, and then the king would actually go from one table to another and really spend time, let's say 40-45 minutes to really have a discussion with all of them. And then again, even though the king is seated there in his suit, the others are there in their sporting gear. That was the great mixture of the event. I guess my most memorable moment had to deal with Team Ukraine. Of course, everyone was really grateful that they could make it to come over with a team, despite the fact that in the 50 days leading up to the games, since the war started, they lost 4 of their comrades in the battlefields. So like the emotions from them, and also of course in the wider Invictus Games family, was really vivid. And on the day before the opening ceremony, the Ukrainian team assembled at the sport campus in the Zuiderpark. I was there with my CEO, and we were in a live stream with President Zelensky in Kiev. So he was having a speech, also cheering for them and stimulating them to have a wonderful and inspiring week ahead. And regardless of how many gold medals they would win, that was not the purpose at all, because they, well, in his opinion, like they were gold already due to the fact that they made it to The Hague, that they made it to the International City of Peace and Justice, and be there together with their comrades from 19 other participating nations. So that spirit, that vibe, those emotions were really, really wonderful to see throughout the competition week. And then, like at the closing ceremony, the handover from the flag of the Invictus Games from The Hague to Düsseldorf, even though we had the mayors of the 2 cities in the audience, we still decided, okay, it's competitors first. So the handover ceremony will be done by competitors. So 1 Dutch competitor to the German competitor having the handover ceremony, rather than that it would be a formal event from 1 mayor to the other. So after this inspiring week in The Hague, it's all up to Düsseldorf to organize a very good, wonderful, and inspiring edition next year to honor these heroes in Germany. So hopefully, like if you have the time, if you are around in September 2023, really go there, visit it, because it is well, kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity to see it. Thank you very much, and well, I hope I inspired you a little bit as well on the Invictus Games spirit.
Thank you, Mark. That was quite brilliant and very interesting. I think I learned a lot in terms of what you've shared. Really brilliant experience, I must say. And so many colors. I like colors. So many colors everywhere. That just make it really, you know, welcoming. And it's so a beautiful way, the way you've shared your experience. People can practically, you know, make meaning to some of the lessons, and we really appreciate that. So I've got a few questions. I think I've seen one or two questions on the roll. But before then, I would like to just find out. So what will you say is the most difficult thing you experienced and your team in terms of this event, in terms of the Invictus Games? I mean, your team, what was that thing that really gave you people a hustle?
Well, I guess the most or the biggest challenge was to indeed find the right balance between that it is a sports event and that not the political debate and dialogue would be overloading that. So finding the balance between sports and politics, especially due to the fact, of course, what the nature of the event is, and that we are talking about wounded and sick servicemen and women of 20 countries, and one of those countries is at war at the moment. So of course, like there were a lot of different interests at stake. Also in the preparation on the level of delegations, who would come or not, how would it be impacted by the war in Ukraine. So that was the biggest challenge. But I guess, like in the eyes of almost all of the stakeholders that we worked with, we definitely succeeded in that. Yeah, because the main focus was still on the competitors and their friends and family, rather than on the politicians and the military officials.
Okay, that's quite nice. Nicolita, do you have any question? I think there's a question. I'm trying to pick that question from there.
Yeah, Miguel Macedo just asked a question. Miguel is also a sports protocol professional. I've known him for a while, and he did pose a question: why to choose the French language instead of a global language like English? That's his question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's not really a decision that we made as local organizing committee. You should see it like this, just like, for example, with the Olympic Games, that there is an Invictus Games Foundation based in London. They are kind of the overarching body. And then you have the local organizing committees in every city that is actually organizing it. And I was part of that. And the Invictus Games Foundation in London has this this rule on the flag protocol, and indeed they indicated that like French, as like in their opinion, also well, one of the two, or perhaps the most diplomatic language that is there, that they use the French alphabet rather than the English.
Thank you so much. I particularly enjoyed your presentation. This topic itself and the area is very, very close to my heart, having been working for European World Championships over the last 15 years. So I really, really enjoyed this presentation, Mark. Thank you so much. And there are so many nice and appreciative comments in the chat box. So I do encourage to go through them. And in case, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any more questions, just feel free to submit it in writing. And if there isn't any more questions, and
I think we have one.
Yes,
there's one I think is interesting. We could pick on it.
Where?
I'm interested to know, Mark, how the VIPs felt about their sitting locations, sitting behind any pushback on that. You know, I mean, how do they feel?
All good. There were no complaints whatsoever, because everyone knew that it was not about them, but about the competitors. And like in the grandstand, like we had like kind of the royal box, which consisted of 11 rows. Like the first row was on the ground floor, and then it's actually started to go up. So on the first row over there, like you couldn't really see a lot, because of course all the competitors were seated right in front of you. So that's why we decided to have the main row with also His Majesty the King and all the ministerial delegations on the 7th row, like what you normally do in a theater as well. Like for example, if you are listening to a concert, then not necessarily the first row are the best seats, because then you are too close or too low in front of the stage. So rather seated at 2/3 of the stadium rather than on the first row. And like, if the king is happy about the seats, then of course everyone else shouldn't complain either. And that didn't happen. Yeah. So.
Wow,
Thank
that's
you.
really. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you for sharing this, and I'm sure the participants are really, really, happy about what you've shared, and I think we say thank you again. Thank you.
My pleasure.